Okay, so I will continue the discussions we were having regarding fatigue theory and fatigue concept of fatigue, and we'll try to wrap up the slides that were yet to be finished from the last lecture. But before doing that, I would like to go through one specific case study or numerical example to see how the different concepts that we have learned about the fatigue can be used in designing or in design scenario. So before doing that, I think there is some question about envelopes, failure envelopes. So let me actually say that we have learned two types of failure envelopes, and that are for static loading. Failure envelopes, and the failure envelopes that we have learned so far is for static loading. And there are two types of failure envelopes that we have seen. One is for Tresca criteria, which goes like a square in the first and third quadrant. These are your principal stresses. And then you have straight line on the second and fourth quadrant. Excuse me. So this is a failure envelope for Tresca criteria. And for von Mises criteria, we have the same set of axes, sigma 1 and sigma 2. These are the two set of principal stresses. And for von Mises criteria, it is an ellipse which is tilted. So you have this for von Mises criteria.
Professor,
What is, sorry?
um, for the final, until what lecture are we gonna? Is it cumulative for all the lectures that we've had?
Yes. So since there are no midterms and only one final exam, so it will cover the entire concepts or entire all the lectures that we have been learning in this course or we have been doing in this course.
So should we just dial in on the homework, or like how do we? I mean, how can we get better prepared for the final? Like, are we gonna have like a study
So
guide?
yeah, so if you're comfortable with the lecture slides and if you're comfortable with the homework problems and the unsolved problems in the textbook for the chapters that we have covered, you are more than prepared for any type of exam. Not for the finals, for any other scenario, design scenario in real life applications.
Okay.
Will you be posting the recorded lectures soon?
Recorded lectures. I have promised to post one recorded lecture, and I did that for one of the case studies we were doing, and it is in the my media gallery for this beach board. But for the other lectures, I have not yet edited. Do you really want the recorded lectures, or the lecture notes should be good enough that I can post in the beach board?
The report is good.
Yeah, having the recorded lectures is nice because, like, I know I'm an auditory learner, so reviewing the notes isn't always as helpful for me.
Okay, I will try, but I cannot promise to do that very soon because of the other set of deliverables. But I will try to upload the recorded lectures. If you can help me, can you tell me exactly which lectures are important, or in the sense that you are actually interested to know about? Because then that will reduce my workload by not editing all the recorded lectures so far.
I think it should be fine if you don't edit it because we can just skip if there's any like pauses.
Okay.
That way you don't have to edit them at all and it won't take as much work to do.
Okay, then I will try to do that. Hopefully by,
Thank you.
yeah, welcome. By this weekend or probably by next for sure. Okay, any other concerns, guys? Okay, if not, then let's continue our discussion with the failure envelopes. I don't know who asked this question. Can you quickly identify yourself, please, just for the sake of the discussions?
It's me.
Uh, yeah, can you identify yourself by?
James.
Sorry.
Jose, anybody who raised the question or professor?
Yeah, the student who actually asked about the failure envelopes.
I did.
And your name, please?
James Costley.
James. Sorry, I missed that part.
It's okay.
James. So what we are actually covering in this specific discussion is that how the envelopes help us to determine the factor of safety for a specific design situation. So for example, if you have a design situation where you know the principal stresses are coming out to be, for example, sigma 1 is 50 megapascals, sigma 2 is negative 10 megapascals, and sigma 3 is 0 megapascals. If you ended up with a situation where you know that these are the principal stresses for a given situation, given design situation, then how can you ensure that that specific loading scenario is safe or unsafe, or whether there is going to be failure or not, or whether there is sufficient factor of safety or not. Now, these are the principal stresses. So most of the time you may not be given the principal stresses exactly. You will be given sigma xx, tau xy, stresses in Cartesian coordinate systems. And what you have to do is you have to convert those stresses into principal stresses first. And once you convert them into principal stresses, then what you have to do is graphically either you plot them here, or you can just simply use the analytical equation to see whether there is sufficient factor of safety or not.
Do you need 3 stresses or are 2 just fine?
You always need to concern about 3 stresses, because generally when you are given a situation, you will always be dealing with plane stress. So you will only be considering sigma 1 and sigma 2. But in that case, sigma 3 will be 0. So this is a plane stress situation where sigma 3, the out of plane principal stress, is 0.
Okay.
This is important to consider. The reason being, here I have taken sigma 2 as minus 10 megapascals. And let's say I have another design situation where the principal stresses are sigma 1 is 50 megapascals, sigma 2 is 10 megapascals, and sigma 3 is 0 megapascals. So by changing the sign, you will see that the factor of safety changes a lot between these two situations. So let's figure out those factor of safety. And I will just use the Tresca criteria because it is easy to show using the analytical method as well. So in Tresca criteria, if you see, let's see first graphically how to plot it. Sigma 1 is 50 megapascals, so I know. So let's say this is the failure stresses, here is 100. This is 100 as well, so all are 100 megapascals. These are just for the sake of our discussion. I am not using any specific material property here. I'm just using these numbers to make sure that we understand how to calculate the factor of safety. Now, if I have to plot sigma 1 50 and sigma 2 negative 10, then it will be here 50 will be here and negative 10 will be here. So this will be this point on the third quadrant. So in the third quadrant, if you actually look at the failure envelope is a straight line joining this point and this point. And the factor of safety can be obtained by connecting this line origin to this point and extending it till it connects the straight line. So this is the point where you can extend this straight line, which we call as load line. This type of line, which connects the origin to the point of the stresses where the stresses are there, is called as load line. Does it make sense to everybody so far?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if I look at this specific situation, before I calculate the factor of safety, let me actually plot this point as well, which is a sigma 1 50, sigma 2 10, and sigma 3 0. So if I have 50 here, sigma 1 and sigma 2 is 10. Now I have this point on the on the first quadrant. And now if you see the load line connects the origin to this point, and it extends till it connects till it reaches the failure line. And you will see that this load line extends a little bit more, because now in this first quadrant, my failure envelope is a vertical line. Here it is an inclined line. So that means if I am in this first quadrant, then the factor of safety will be different from if I am in the third quadrant. Sorry, fourth quadrant, first, second, third, and fourth. So having a failure, having a point or a design situation or design scenario or loading scenario in the first quadrant versus fourth quadrant will have different factors of safety. So one method of calculating the factor of safety is you plot these points, graphically estimate the distance from origin to this point and from this point to the point where it intersects the vertical axis. And the factor of safety will be, in this situation, it will be, let's say N would be OB divided by OA. And here the factor of safety would be, let's say this is C and this is D, and factor of safety will be OD divided by OC. Now, let me ask you, James, in which case you think the factor of safety will be higher, or you have more factor of safety, whether it will be in this scenario or whether it will be in this scenario?
The AB will be higher.
This will be higher, right?
Yeah.
I mean, by graphically, it also looks like this will be higher. And that is what you need to consider, because if you just look at the values and you do not consider sigma 3, the out of plane stress, then what happens that the factor of safety calculations will not be correct. So for example, it will make sense if I actually write the equation that for the Tresca criteria, the factor of safety is given by sigma max minus sigma min divided by 2. And that has to be less than equals to yield strength divided by 2. So that is for Tresca criteria. And if I look at this, what is sigma max here in this situation? For this specific scenario, what is sigma max? My maximum principal stress?
50.
Perfect. And what is minimum principal stress?
-10.
-10. Perfect. So that has to be less than S yield stress by 2. And if you look at that, that is 30 divided by yield stress, which is my 100 by 2 or equals to 50. So the factor of safety here is 50 divided by 30, which is whatever number you say, it's 5 by 3. That is your NA divide. It is basically the factor of safety for this specific example, design case or loading scenario. Okay. Make sense?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. In this scenario, for loading scenario B, what will happen that if I have the same sigma max minus sigma min divided by 2, I will get sigma max as 50 megapascals. You agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what is sigma minimum now?
0.
0. Now you are considering this 0 just because you are considering sigma 3. If you do not take sigma 3 into account, you would consider sigma minimum as only 10. Right? And that would be a mistake, because actually the sigma 3 is 0, and that is the minimum principal stress, which you have to consider here.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense?
Yes.
So now if we play with the numbers here the same way as we did, we actually got 25 will be 100 by 2, which is 50. Then factor of safety will be 50 divided by 25. It will be 2. And you will see here that the factor of safety here is how much? Is 50 minus 0 divided by 2, which is 2, and here it is 1 point something. So factor of safety is basically higher in this scenario, but not here.
Okay. And it's the same for the von Mises?
Same thing for the von Mises, except the von Mises, the failure criteria is changed. Basically, you have the von Mises stress has to be less than equals to the yield strength.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So von Mises criteria, the von Mises stress has to be less than sigma sy. And one misses stress in terms of principal stress is sigma 1 minus sigma 2 whole square plus sigma 2 minus sigma 3 whole square plus sigma 3 minus sigma 1 whole square divided by 2. Sigma 3 minus sigma 1 whole square divided by 2 and square root of that should be less than the yield.
Right. I remember that.
And if you do not consider sigma 3, value of sigma 3 in this, the expression for von Mises will be wrong then. So you have to always consider 3 principal stresses when you are trying to calculate the factor of safety. Make sense?
Okay. Yep. That clears it up.
Any other questions or doubts, guys? If you have anything else, excuse me.
On your lecture slides for the Tresca theory, it says it's sigma max minus sigma min over 2 is greater than or equal to the sy over 2.
Yeah, so what it says, if it is greater than failure will occur. If it is less than, then you are within the envelope.
Okay, thank you.
So if I use this sign, I will say the material is safe. If this happens, and if I reverse the inequality, I will say material fails if sigma max minus sigma min divided by 2 is greater than or equals to sy over 2. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it basically means you are within this boundaries, you are less than sy over 2, or if you're greater than sy over 2. If you're greater than sy over 2, that means material fails. So this is the criteria you probably have seen. I'm saying if it is safe, then it has to be less than. This stress, maximum shear stress, has to be less than the yield stress. Then the material will be safe. And as you can see, material is safe, and I can calculate the factor of safety accordingly. Okay. Any other questions, guys? So I'm kind of pleased with your questions, which makes me feel that you are basically reading that text, or you are basically reading the text material or study material. I thought that you are just, excuse me, because there are no such midterms or exams, you are just not paying that much attention to the lectures. But it's good that you are working on it. And I believe some of the homework problems forced you to go through some of those concepts that probably you would have not gone through them easily. Is that a true assessment or right assessment, guys?
The homework helps.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a feedback about the homeworks. That is it like, I have purposefully added some simulation exercises so that you actually have to think about the equations, the cases that you are learning, rather than just plugging in the numbers and giving the answers. So that is the purpose of giving the homeworks, to just give you some food for thought and you actually learn something out of the text material. Okay, any other questions before we move to fatigue theory and basically continuation of the topic or discussions we were having from the last lecture? Okay, if not, then let's continue our discussion about the fatigue. So just to quickly recap, I will come back to the PowerPoint slides. They are all already posted in the Beachboard last week. So I will recap the concepts that we are going to learn in this slides or in this document using the PowerPoint slides at the end of the lecture. So I'm just trying to go through some of the concepts in the document itself. So the first thing that we learned about in fatigue is called as endurance strength. And endurance strength, as I have mentioned, that it is basically the value of the stress at which failure happens in a material when it is subjected to repetitive loading and unloading cycles. So this is your ultimate tensile strength. This is the number of cycles This is in log plots. So 10 raised to power 0, 1, so and so forth, 10 raised to power 6, 7, 8, and so on. And what was observed, at least for steel specimen, that the failure is observed is, I mean, the failure happens and it is observed that failure takes place for stress values, which is much, much less than the ultimate tensile strength when the number of cycles, this is number of cycles of repetitive loading and unloading increases. And what is meant by number of cycles or repetitive loading and unloading cycles? It basically means that the loading profile now keeps on changing with time. It is no longer static load. So we have gone past the concepts we learned in 373 deformables, and we are now going in the dynamic loading scenario. Dynamic loading scenario basically means this is your load, or we are representing that by stress, and this is either time or number of cycles. Any parameter will basically can be used to represent the horizontal axis. So you have positive stresses and negative stresses. So this is repetitive loading, unloading, loading, unloading, loading, unloading. So this is basically going on continuously. And if it happens continuously, then if it happens for 1 million cycles, then it is observed that the component or any component which is made up of steel will fail at a stress value given by the endurance strength. Because after that, it is observed that the stresses are no longer decreasing. It remains, it plateaus. The test data actually plateaus at this. This is the knee point, and at that point, whatever the stress value is for whatever the stress is there for the material to fail at 1 million cycles is called as the endurance strength. Is that making sense to everybody so far?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is 1 million cycles. So if a material or a component, structural component, can withstand a specific value of stress for 1 million cycles of repetitive loading and unloading, that is what we call, that value of stress is called as endurance strength of the material. And endurance strength of a material is a function of many different parameters, like it is the function of the surface condition, whether it is smooth surface, or it is a ground surface, or it is a coarse surface, whether it has surface impurities, what are the manufacturing processes that were used for fabrication of the component, what is the environment on which this specific component actually is operating. So every single parameter that influences the stress is going to affect the endurance strength. So while calculating the endurance strength of a material, you have to be careful about the environment, the operating conditions, the service life, the processes, manufacturing processes that are used for fabrication, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going through the specific constants, but let me actually tell you what that relationship looks like. It is the corrected endurance strength is given by Ka times Kb times Kc times Kd times Ke. I believe there is some another factor. I don't remember whether Kf is there or not. Sc prime. This is the lab tested endurance strength. And this is the corrected endurance strength. So when you have to use any, you have to use this endurance strength in your calculations, you have to first go through all these specific constants and see what those values of the constants are. And for each of these constants, you have a tabular properties, you have tables to refer to. So for example, Ka refers to the surface condition. I may be not be confident about all of the constants, but we will go through them in the lecture slides. These are already mentioned. So Ka, I believe, is surface condition. Kc, Kb is size factor. Kc, I believe, is loading factor. KD, I believe, is temperature factor. KE is reliability factor. And I believe KF is your miscellaneous factors. So yeah, there are A, B, C, D, E, and F. There are so many factors. And for each of these factors, there are specific tables that you can refer and you can plug those numbers from those tables. And SC prime is actually a lab tested endurance strength. Basically, it means that it is the endurance strength for a given material under laboratory conditions or under very controlled conditions. So this is a value that you will get from the tables for any material, but you cannot use this value as such, because as I said that the endurance strength of a material depends on all these factors. What is the surface condition? What is the size factor? How much load is being applied, whether it is axial load or bending load or a torsion load, what type of temperature, that is high temperature, elevated temperature operation or low temperature operations, how much reliability is desired, and what are the other miscellaneous factors for which we have no specific control on. So all these factors needs to be taken into consideration to find the correct endurance strength that goes into the design calculations. So this is the value that goes into the design calculations. Does it make sense, guys?
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. Any questions so far?
What was KE?
KE is reliability factor. Reliability factor basically
Okay,
means
thank you.
how much reliability you are asking a component to operate on. So if you want 50% reliability, that means you are expecting the 50% of the components will fail in service before the desired life is reached. So depending on how much reliability you expect from a specific component, that has a specific correction factor for your endurance strength. Generally, the reliability has to be greater than 95% in design situation. And if you want your reliability to be more than 95%, let's say 96, 97, 98, 99, for every increment of this reliability, you basically are expecting the specific endurance strength to get reduced. So you can get those values from the tables as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome. R sub F. What is F? What is the F? Here, F basically stands for the miscellaneous factors, all other factors that are not taken into consideration. So that is KF. Okay, so excuse me. So having said that, now from here onwards, what we basically need to see is we need to characterize the fatigue load to find out what is the number of cycles to failure and what is the factor of safety. So in fatigue calculations, so in design calculations that require or that are based on fatigue loading, the objective is that given a stress situation, given a loading scenario, how many cycles of fatigue a component will last. That is one of the design objective for a designer, or one of the requirement, or one of the parameter that needs to be estimated. How many number of cycles of fatigue a component will last before failure takes place. That is before failure takes place. And the second objective is what is the factor of safety? Just like in static loading, what is the factor of safety for fatigue load? So these are the two important questions that a designer has to find, or has to estimate, or has to get an answer, that if a specific component is subjected to this type of cyclic loading and unloading situation, how many number of cycles can that component will last, because these stresses can change its magnitude, they can change it, I mean the frequency can change, and so on and so forth. So we have to basically find out after how many cycles a component will fail. The second important parameter of interest is what is a factor of safety for fatigue loading. So how much factor of safety do we have? How much margin do we have to reduce the material or reduce the geometry and dimensions to increase the stresses? How much margin we have to increase the stresses, basically. So that is what we call as factor of safety for fatigue loading. So we will actually see how we can answer these two questions for a given loading situation or given case study that we will actually take in a short while from now. To answer the first question, before we answer the first question, we need to understand a bit of the terminologies about the fatigue cycles. So let's say you have this is 0, this is how the loading and unloading happens. So you have got sigma maximum. This is a positive number, let's say just a non-zero number, sigma max, this number, and this number is sigma minimum. So if you see this type of loading and unloading scenario, which is basically following a sinusoidal pattern, can you tell me what will be the amplitude of this sine curve? What will be the amplitude of this sine curve, of this repetitive loading and unloading cycle? Can anybody volunteer to determine what is going to be the amplitude of that, if you know sigma maximum and sigma minimum?
1/2 max minus min.
Perfect. So it is half sigma max minus sigma min. So sigma max minus sigma min divided by 2 is your amplitude. This is sigma amplitude. And similarly, so this is, you have sigma amplitude, and the value that it is, the mid-range component of that is called as sigma mean, or mid-range component is given by half sigma max plus sigma minimum. Is everybody fine with this nomenclature and with this discussion, or with the description about sigma amplitude and sigma mean, mid-range component or mean stress? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody has any doubts or any questions, please let me know. I'll try to explain again. So assuming everybody is doing good so far. So if sigma mean, the mid-range component, is 0, then what you have is completely reversed loading and unloading scenario. So this is sigma max and this is sigma mean, and they are both equal in magnitude but opposite in direction. This is called completely reversed loading scenario. In this situation, there is an empirical relationship to calculate the number of cycles of fatigue to failure, and that is given by N is equals to, actually it comes from this relationship, SF is in A n raised to power B. So it will be sigma reversible divided by A 1 over B. So this is a very powerful relationship that tells you that what is the number of cycles to failure for this completely reversed loading scenario, where A and B are constants, depends on our constants that depend on material properties. So A is given by F times S ultimate tensile strength, Fu2 square by SE, and B is 1 over 3 F I have to look at this expression. I forgot that. FSUT divided by C. Okay. So these are basically the constants where F is your fatigue strength fraction. There is a tabular chart where you can find for fatigue strength fraction for a given material for a given stress situation. SUT is ultimate tensile strength. SC is your endurance strength. So you are basically given these properties for a specific choice of material. What is ultimate tensile strength? What is endurance strength? What is a fatigue strength fraction? So given these properties, you can calculate the constants A and B. And once you calculate the constants A and B, you can plug in this equation and basically determine how many number of cycles a given component will last if it is subjected to sigma plus minus sigma loading, completely reverse loading scenario. So sigma reversible, now you have sigma reversible. For example, if it is 50 megapascals plus minus 50 megapascals, then you have sigma reversible as 50, and A and B are the constants, and that will give you a specific number, and that will give you the number of cycles to failure for that scenario. Now, if the sigma reversible changes to 100 megapascals plus minus 100, then you have to plug in that number here and you will calculate the number of cycles to failure. Is that making sense, guys, so far?
What is sigma reversible again?
So this is sigma reversible. Completely reverse loading scenario. So you have positive sigma and negative sigma, and they are equal in magnitude. That is why it's called reversible sigma. Stresses under reversible or completely reverse loading scenario.
So is that when sigma mean is 0?
Yes, that is when sigma mean is 0.
Okay.
Otherwise, you will never have completely reversed cycle. I mean, you will have sigma minimum is somewhat different from sigma maximum, but they will never be equal in magnitudes if sigma mean is non-zero.
And professor,
Yeah.
the sigma amp is the height of the amplitude of the sine curve, while sigma mean is the height of the average of the sine
This
curve.
is the average of the sine curve, yeah. Height of the average sine curve, yes.
And is sigma amp the distance from the sigma mean to the top?
Yes, distance from the sigma mean to the top.
And professor, where we have A and B, the F in those variables, what does the F equal, or what is it?
F is a fatigue strength fraction, and for a given material and given stresses, you can use the tabular values, tabular chart to get this coefficient, fatigue strength coefficient, fatigue strength fraction. So this is again constant, and you can find that constant using tabular values or tables that are there in the literature.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. In essence, these A and B are nothing but the constants that depend on material properties, and you can estimate those constants for a given material. Now, if you know a material, you know those A's and B's. The only thing that you need to know is how much loading, completely reverse loading, you are applying on a structural component. So if you are applying 50 plus minus 50 megapascals, you will plug in that number here, 50 here. If you are applying plus minus 100 megapascals, you will apply 100 over here, and you can find the number of cycles to failure from this equation. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Any questions, guys, so far? Okay, if not,
There's a question in the chat.
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat.
Yeah, I was just looking at it. Basically says what does sigma reversible mean? So I just discussed about it, that it is nothing but the stress that happens for the completely reverse loading scenario. That is what sigma reversible is. So that is the only catch here, that this formula, this is a very powerful formula, but this only and only works if you have this situation, completely reverse loading scenario. If you do not have that loading scenario, what is going to happen? That we will actually learn in a second. So what would happen that how if you do not have this completely reverse loading scenario, how to use this formula? So we will cover that case as well in a short while from now. But this specific equation or this specific expression answers the first question, that if you are given a completely reverse loading scenario, you can determine what is the number of cycles a component can last before it fails. Is everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay, now moving to the next question that we have here. What is the factor of safety for fatigue load? So how to calculate the factor of safety? So to calculate the factor of safety, what we need to do is we again use failure envelopes, but this time the failure envelopes will look a bit different now. So now we have the failure envelopes for fatigue. And how do we plot that? So we first calculate the sigma amplitude. So let's say I have here fatigue cycles or loading cycles that is happening like this, and this is 0, mean is non-zero, so this is your mean, sigma mean, and the amplitude is the value from the mean, sigma amplitude. This is sigma maximum, this is sigma minimum, and sigma amplitude is given by 1/2 sigma max minus sigma minimum, and sigma mean is 1/2 sigma max plus sigma mean. Now to find the factor of safety or to estimate the factor of safety, what we have to do is to use some criteria, failure criteria for fatigue. And for fatigue, what we have to do is in the horizontal axis, what we are going to plot is the mid-range component or the mean component, mid-range or mean stresses. And on the y-axis, the vertical axis, we are going to plot the amplitude stresses, just amplitude of the stresses. On this axis, mark a point, ultimate tensile strength over here. And on this axis, mark a point, which is endurance strength over here. And you know that generally speaking, as I have shown you that if for different components and different applications, endurance strength will keep on changing. But as a rule of thumb, you can always assume that endurance strength is approximately 0.5 times of the ultimate tensile strength. This is a rule of the thumb. So it is not going to be the case always, because for every specific application, you have to find the endurance strength which keeps on changing. This does not change. It changes only for maybe temperatures, but otherwise ultimate tensile strength is basically the property of a material that you obtain using the stress strain diagram or tensile testing of a material. So this does not change. But this depends a lot on the manufacturing processes, it depends a lot on the applications, the environment, the operating condition, and so on and so forth. But just for the first iteration, design iteration, you can always assume, if you do not know those conditions, you can always assume that endurance strength is approximately 0.5 or 1/2 of the ultimate tensile strength. So on the y-axis, you are plotting the amplitude of the stresses, which is sigma amp on the y-axis. On the x-axis, you are plotting the mean stresses. So marking these values, endurance strength on the y-axis, ultimate tensile strength on the x-axis, you join this using a straight line. Okay, and this straight line is the failure envelope for fatigue theory, and this is called as modified Goodman line. This is a failure envelope for fatigue loading scenario. Failure envelope for fatigue. So what it basically says that, for example, let's take and say, for example, you have the numbers as say sigma amplitude is 50 megapascals, sigma mean is 10 megapascals. Let's say these are just numbers for a given loading scenario. And ultimate tensile strength for a material is, let's say, 200 megapascals. And endurance strength approximately half is 100 megapascals. Now these are the 2 points you have plotted. This is 0, 0 here. If you have to plot sigma amplitude and sigma mean, how will you plot that? The amplitude component goes on the y-axis. So 1, 2, 3, so approximately half. This is your 50. So this is your sigma A, and the mean component goes on the x-axis. So 100 here. So approximately sigma mean is here, sigma mean. This is 10 and this is 50. So this is the point you actually plot on this figure. Is that making sense to you guys so far?
Yes.
Yeah. Now to calculate the factor of safety, you join a line connecting the origin to this point, the loading scenario, and extend this. This is your load line. And again, the factor of safety can be obtained by factor of safety is OB divided by OA. So OB, length of OB divided by length of OA is your factor of safety for fatigue loading. This is a factor of safety for fatigue loading using modified Goodman criteria. Let me know, guys, if it makes sense or if you guys are following it so far or if you have any other questions.
What's sigma A again?
Sigma A is your amplitude. This is the amplitude. This is the point. This is the axis where all the amplitude components will be plotted. And this is the axis where all the mean stresses or mid-range component will be plotted. Does it make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So now you know how to calculate the factor of safety for fatigue loading using modified Goodman criteria. And let me tell you that there are around 4 or 5 different failure criteria for fatigue. Just like in static loading, we have Triska criteria, von Mises criteria, just that too. There may be some others which are not widely used. But in fatigue, because the fatigue failure is very stochastic in nature, that means there are a lot of variabilities that actually come into play. That is the reason that there is no set criteria or widely accepted failure criteria in the real world scenario. So the most popular or the most commonly used or referred to failure criteria is called as modified Goodman line. That is what it is shown here. And analytically, it is represented by this equation, which is given by sigma A divided by SE plus sigma M divided by SUT equals 1. This is the equation of a straight line, which is this line. And if you have to calculate the factor of safety, you can calculate the factor of safety by dividing this by number. I mean, basically you can have n multiplied with those stresses, and that will give you the factor of safety as calculated as n sigma A divided by SA plus sigma M divided by SUT is equals to 1 by n. N is your factor of safety. Let me know if it makes sense, guys. So you can calculate the factor of safety either using this method. Graphically, you can plot the line. You can basically measure what is the distance from O to this point where it intersects this straight line. That is your OB. Length divided by the length of OA will give you the factor of safety, or you can use this equation to calculate the factor of safety. Both will give you the same answer. Does it make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Any questions from anybody? Whoever, I mean, if you have any questions, if you are not following it at any point, please let me know. I'll try to explain again. Okay. So if there are no questions, then let me actually come to the second part of the first question, which says that how many number of cycles to failure happens in this scenario where we know that mean is not 0. So this is not completely reversed loading scenario because sigma mean is not equals to 0. So in this situation, how to calculate the number of cycles to failure? Number of cycles to failure. How to calculate that? So to do that, what you are going to do, you will draw a straight line from this point and this connecting this point and see where it extends and cuts the vertical axis. So this is the value which is called as equivalent sigma reversible equivalent, equivalent reversible sigma or equivalent reversible stress for this loading scenario. So basically at this point, the mean component is 0 because you see the mean component is on the x-axis. So if I join a line connecting this point to this point and extend it to the vertical axis, wherever it intersects at this point, mean is 0. That means I am getting an equivalent reversible stress for this situation. And that is what we are going to use in our formula. So if you remember the formula from the previous slide, it was sigma reversible divided by A and raised to the power 1 over B. Now here, since we do not have reversible, we have to use sigma reversible equivalent. A and B remains as it is. And how to get this? You basically join a line connecting this point and extend it to the vertical axis. This is the point where you will get sigma reversible equivalent. That is what you are going to use here to find the number of cycles to failure. Let me know, guys, if it makes sense to you or you are following it.
Yep.
Sigma reversible change given different material properties?
Sorry, come again. What is your question?
Does sigma reversible change given different material properties?
No, sigma reversible is a function of your applied loading. So it does not depend on the material property. It depends on how much load you are applying to a material, irrespective of its properties. So it is coming from the external factor. Do you see what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
So let's take a specific example. Okay, there is some other question from somebody.
I was going to say for the equation on the right hand side, it says sigma reversible comma. What does that say?
Equivalent, EQ.
Oh, okay.
EQ here, equivalent. So let me take one specific example that may help you to understand the equations I'm trying, or basically the specific set of equations we are using here. So let me actually use a pressurized vessel case study. So let's say we have thin pressure vessels. So I'm going slightly off the topic here just to calculate the stresses for thin pressure vessels, but I will come back to this specific scenario and this specific discussion to wrap up our case study. So this is a case study I thought to show or demonstrate in today's lecture. So once I get the stresses and the methodology that we need to use to understand the design or to do the design calculations, I will come back to this line of thought or this specific discussion, how to calculate the factor of safety and how to calculate the number of cycles to failure. So for example, let's say you have a thin pressure vessels, and thin pressure vessel basically means that you have a vessel which is cylindrical shape and it is closed and it is having a very thin shell, or basically it has this, the thickness is very, very small as compared to the radius. So that is what we call as thin pressure vessels. So the radius R is much, much greater than the thickness. Generally, the ratio for thin pressure vessels is that T over R is less than 1 over 10, or rather your thickness is less than 10 times or 1/10 of the radius. That's basically we consider thin pressure vessels. Generally, we consider this type of vessels as thin pressure vessels. So if it is pressurized from inside with a gas, there are two types of stresses that will come. So if I basically take a section here and split the cylinder into half, you'll see that there will be stresses in the material, which we call as sigma circumferential stresses. And there is pressure acting from the inside of the gas pressure. This is P. So if you have to find the circumferential stresses, if you remember from the discussions in the 373 or deformables, then you can find that sigma theta as given by P times R, the radius of the cross section, radius of this cylinder, divided by thickness. Okay. And the way we got this is basically if you have this length as L, this length is L, then sigma theta times thickness times L times 2, because there are two such areas, should be equals to pressure times projected area, which will be 2R times L, and that will give you sigma theta as PR divided by T. And similarly, if you take the section in the along the axial direction, what you actually will get is longitudinal stresses, and the longitudinal stresses are basically, so this is your end cap of the cylinder. So these are your longitudinal stresses. And for the pressure that is getting applied, we can find the stresses at sigma longitudinal times 2 pi R times T should be equals to pressure times pi R square. And that will give me longitudinal stresses PR divided by 2T. So these are also your principal stresses, because for thin pressure vessels, there are no shear stresses. And if there are no shear stresses, then the normal stresses are also called as principal stresses. So one of the principal stresses is this. Let me call it principal stress number 1. And this is for sigma 1. And this is principal stress number 2. Does it make sense to you guys so far?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty straightforward discussion from the previous lectures, right? Previous maybe courses. So now we come back and see how we can actually come back to our discussion here. So once we have got sigma 1 and sigma 2, what we have to do is we have to find the von Mises stresses. Sigma von Mises. Always. We always combine the different principal stresses into von Mises stresses, and we know the von Mises stresses formula for that is 1. We just have seen a while ago, sigma 1 minus sigma 2 square plus sigma 2 minus sigma 3 whole square plus sigma 3 minus sigma 1 whole square divided by 2 and square root of the whole. So that is your von Mises stress. And here, what is sigma 3, by the way?
0.
Just give it a thought, what will be sigma 3 in this scenario? So I have given you sigma 1, which is basically the circumferential stress. If you split this cylinder using a plane like that, you end up a section like this. If you split it using a plane like this, then you end up with a section like that. Now this will give you sigma 1, this will give you sigma 2. What will be sigma 3 then? Sigma 3 is basically equals to the pressure if it is inside and 0 outside, isn't it? Sigma 3 will be basically, if you look at here, you have sigma 1 which is acting like this, sigma 2 acting away from, it is acting perpendicular to this section, and sigma 3 will be your pressure itself, the normal pressure that is acting on the internal surface. Sigma 3 is negative P for inside surface and 0 for outside surface. Okay. Any doubt, any questions, any concerns? I will try to explain again.
Professor, what is that subscript? It's like sigma something. This is the last one.
This one?
Above that one? The one.
This
next
one?
to that one right there.
Sorry, this is von Mises stress.
What is
Sigma
it?
minus sigma 2 minus sigma 3 minus sigma 1.
No, the one above that. Above, yeah, that right there. What does that say?
Von Mises.
One
So,
misses?
criteria, just that we have seen. Tresca
Oh,
criteria.
one misses. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions, any concerns, any doubts, guys? If you have anything that you are not following, please let me know. I will try to explain it. So you guys are good so far?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see how this discussion gets molded into this. Now imagine you have this thin pressure vessel, but it can be for example, it can be a fuselage of an aircraft. So when the aircraft takes off from the ground, the compartment is fully pressurized. And when it is in the ground or on the floor, tarmac, it is not pressurized at all. So basically what happens that this fuselage of an aircraft undergoes pressurization and depressurization. So it undergoes a cycle like this. If this is a pressure and this is the time or number of cycles, then you have on the flight, it is pressurized, then on the ground, depressurized. Then it remains 0. Then again, it takes off, pressurized. Till the flight, it remains pressurized and then depressurized. Then again depressurized till the ground, and then when it takes off again, it again gets pressurized and then it depressurized. Does it make sense, guys, so far?
Yes.
Yeah, this is a pressure and pressurization and depressurization cycle, and that happens for all thin pressure vessels. And this is specifically, let's say, the fuselage of an aircraft. And it undergoes this type of pressurization and depressurization, Now, if it undergoes like this, let's say this pressure is let's say 100 megapascals. What is going to be sigma 1 and sigma 2, guys, for this on sigma 3? You can just that we have seen now that sigma 1 is basically your pressure times radius divided by thickness. So if I know the fuselage aircraft, what is the radius of this fuselage, what is the thickness of the shell of the fuselage, I can calculate what sigma 1 is. I can calculate sigma 2 and I can calculate sigma 3, which is basically a function of the pressure itself. And then I can combine all these into one number, which we call as von Mises stress. So using this pressure cycle, I can calculate my von Mises stress. Correct, guys?
Yeah.
Does everybody follow what I'm trying to say here?
Yep.
Yeah. So can somebody tell me that what would be the mean and what will be the amplitude of this von Mises stress? See, von Mises stress is a function of pressure, and pressure goes like this. So let me also tell you that after doing all these calculations, your von Mises stress comes out to be 75 megapascals for the max pressure and 0 megapascals for the minimum pressure. So Von Mises stress varies like this, the same function, but it varies like this. Let's say it's dotted. So this is your von Mises corresponding to this pressurized cycle. And von Mises maximum is 75 megapascals. Now, what will be the mean and what will be the amplitude of the von Mises stresses? Can somebody tell me what is the amplitude of the von Mises stresses would be? Sigma m for von Mises. How much is the amplitude?
37.5.
37.5 megapascals. And what is the mean?
A 100 minus that, so 62.5.
Not 100, because we are now dealing with stresses, von Mises, not the pressure. So from the pressure, we actually need to calculate the stresses, and from these stresses, we need to combine them into von Mises stresses, and that is what we are plotting in dotted lines. So actually, you have plotting 75 megapascals up and then 0, then 75 megapascals during the pressurization cycle, then 0, then 75 megapascals, and so on and so forth. So the amplitude of this von Mises of this stress cycle is given by 37.5 megapascals. What is the mean component of that? What is the mid-range component of that? Do you guys see what I'm trying to say here? Let me actually use this specific piece of paper here. So you have 75 megapascals during the pressurization cycle, von Mises stress, 0, 75, 0, and so on. So somebody's just told me that amplitude of the stress is going to be from the mean component, which is 37.5 megapascals. That is sigma A. What will be the mean component?
37.5. It would be the same.
It will be 37.5. Yeah.
Same thing.
Same thing. Yes.
Tricky.
Sorry?
Nothing.
Okay. So, yeah. So now you have got from this specific case study, what we actually see that, let's say we are working with fuselage of an aircraft and gets pressurized and depressurized, and by knowing the pressures and how it is varying, we can calculate the principal stresses, and from those principal stresses, we can combine them into von Mises stresses. And those von Mises stresses is what we are plotting here. And that is also follow the same cycle as your pressure, because as the pressure increases, the von Mises stresses increases. As the pressure goes to 0, von Mises stresses goes to 0. So the von Mises stresses, the stresses inside the material is a function of the pressure. Pressure is high, the stresses are high. Pressure is 0, the stresses are 0. Again, the pressure is higher, the stresses are high. So the variation of the von Mises stress will follow the same variation as the variation of your pressure, because these von Mises stresses are nothing but coming because of this pressure itself. So now we have come back to the same concept about finding the amplitude and the mean component. And now if we are interested to determine the factor of safety, go back to this slide or this figure, you know how to plot sigma A, how to plot sigma M, and calculate the factor of safety using this load line, using this modified Goodman criteria. Or you can use this equation where you can say that sigma A divided by SE, whatever the endurance strength of the material that you are going to use. If it is aluminum, then you know what the endurance strength and the ultimate tensile strength are going to be. And that is the factor of safety you can estimate using this calculation. Now, I just take this route to answer one question from a student. I do not recognize the name or recognize the voice as well. So the question was that, is reversible stress going to be a function of the material property? So here you will see that these stresses, or whatever the reversible equivalent stress you are going to get, is a function of the applied pressure, how much pressure you are going to apply or how much pressurization is happening, not as a function of the material property. It can be aluminum, the fuselage can be made up of aluminum, it can be made up of composite, carbon fiber composite, it can be made of something else. or titanium alloys or something else. But this pressurization and depressurization is affecting my von Mises stresses, not the specific choice of material. The specific choice of material are going to affect these properties, endurance strength and ultimate tensile strength, and they will affect the factor of safety, but they will not affect how I am going to get sigma A or sigma reversible equivalent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So that somehow captures all the concepts that we need to know about the fatigue. Please take a minute or so and let me know if you have any questions or concerns.
Can you explain again what it means for the von Mises to be lower than the loading that's happening?
Okay, so I put von Mises stress less than 100 megapascals. So it will be a different number than 100 megapascals because sigma von Mises is going to be combination of sigma 1, sigma 2, and sigma 3. And sigma 1 is a combination of pressure times radius divided by thickness. So sigma 1 will never be equal to the pressure itself. So if sigma 1 is not equal to pressure, sigma 2 will not equal to the pressure, sigma 3 is the only one stress which is equal to the pressure, then that means von Mises stress will not be equal to the pressure. It will be something different value. That's what I actually plot here.
Oh, okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the stresses are basically going to be different from what is the pressure being applied, because this is the gas pressure. This is the pressure of the oxygen or the air that is going to be put inside the chamber or the fuselage. But that pressure is not going to be equals to sigma theta. It is going to be multiplied by the radius divided by thickness, and that will give you sigma 1. Similarly, you will get sigma 2, which will be half of that number. And sigma 3 will be the same as the pressure itself. Combination of all three will give you one resistance.
Got it.
Okay, any other questions, concerns, any questions or any doubts from anybody? Okay, if not, then I will switch to the PowerPoint presentation slide just to wrap up what we have discussed so far. So it is the same PowerPoint slides, but from the last lecture, but I will try to start from the half of that because we already covered the half of the slides in the last lecture. So do you guys see these slides in your screen?
Yeah, we can see the slides.
Yeah.
Good. So let me quickly go through this slide. From this slide, I will start. Number 10, I believe. So from slide number 10, as I was saying, that the corrected endurance strength SE is a function of K, A, B, C, D, E, F, 6 factors times the laboratory tested conditions. AC prime is nothing but it is the endurance limit, which is obtained from carefully prepared and tested and lab tested. And all the constants are your factors: surface condition, size, load, temperature, reliability, and all other factors. So all these factors actually needs to be taken into account while you are calculating the endurance strength for your design calculations. Okay, so this is the most powerful relationship that I was referring to, that how to calculate the number of cycles to failure when you have the repetitive loading and unloading happening in completely reversible manner. You have positive stresses, negative stresses in equal amount. If that is happening, then you can use this formula straightforward as written here or expressed here. N is given by sigma reversible divided by A is a constant and raised to the power 1 over B. And A's and B's are function of the material properties, and F, as somebody was saying, what is F? F is a strength fraction, and you can get the relationship of this F as a function of the ultimate tensile strength from different tables in the literature. So you can plug, depending on the material property, if a material property says of a specific material has ultimate tensile strength of 100 kpsi here, then corresponding to that, the F will be 0.84, as you can see from this chart. So with that value, you can plug in the numbers here and you can get A's and B's calculated. And depending on how much stresses are being applied, you can calculate the number of cycles to failure. So this is a most powerful equation, but unfortunately, this only works for reversible stresses, completely reversible stresses. So these are some of the parameters we were basically seeing, that how to calculate the mid-range component, which is half of the max and min, how to find the amplitude component, and what is amplitude ratio, and what is the stress ratio or R ratio, R value. So you basically take the ratio of minimum stress by maximum stress, and that is your R ratio, and similarly you have amplitude ratio. So I'm quickly going through the slides because we already have seen all this material and covered all this material. This is just to recap what we have seen and what we have learned in this lecture. So I'm just going to quickly go through these slides, but if you have any question at any point, please let me know and you can stop me anytime. That's fine. Excuse me. So, okay, so here are some of the other examples that, for example, if you are talking about a specific finite element simulation of a suspension arm, and you know how the stresses are getting varied from max to min. So how to get the maximum stress and minimum stress. So let's say this wheel is going through a pothole condition. So it goes through a pothole and then it moves up. So depending on that travel, the suspension arm is feeling the stresses, it is getting maximum stress and it is getting a minimum stress. So you see the plot of the stress contours, and from there you can find what is the minimum value and the maximum value of the stress. Once you have got those values from the simulation, the rest of the things calculations can be done by hand, where you can find the mean stress, you can find the amplitude component, and you can calculate all the other factors or the ratios that are required. So this is just basically using finite element simulations, and I actually take it from a specific source. So that is also mentioned in here. You can go to that website and look at other simulations as well, which will tell you how the specific components are analyzed. But the whole takeaway message here is that for any component which is undergoing different amounts of stresses, depending on the loads, you can do the simulation or you can measure it using strain gauges and find out what is the maximum stress that comes in the material and what is the minimum stress that comes in the material. That is those are the two values that you need for calculating the fatigue factor of safety and number of cycles to failure. The same part will be for this, where you are seeing here the crankshaft and the connecting rod, and as the simulations are basically going and the number of revolutions are taking place, you see the stresses are basically changing from positive to negative. So you can find the max and min as well for any component, and everything else from there follows the same discussion. So the important part is that you need to find what is the maximum stress and what is the minimum stress that is happening for a given cyclic loading. So this slide captures what we have just discussed, how to calculate the factor of safety. So for example, using the simulations, you know what is the maximum and minimum stresses. You can find the mid-range component and you can calculate the amplitude component. On the horizontal axis, you plot the mid-range component. On the vertical axis, you plot the amplitude component. And then you draw a straight line connecting endurance strength and the ultimate tensile strength. And that is what we call as modified. Equation of this line is given here, as we have seen. And this is the load line, which basically tells you how to calculate the factor of safety. So for example, if sigma A and sigma M is coming from point A, and you basically measure, you increase the load line, intersect the modified Goodman line, and that will give you the factor of safety against fatigue. Now there is another line that you are seeing here, dotted line, that is basically connecting yield strength on the y-axis and yield strength on the x-axis. This is called as yield line. So it basically tells you that whether the failure is going to take place as yielding or as a fatigue fracture. So here you see the first line that actually is encountered is the fatigue line. So that means using these values of, using these stress values, you are going to see fatigue failure first before yielding take place. There may be situations where yielding takes place first. So for example, if there is some load line that goes like this, then it will strike the yield line first before the fatigue failure. So some of the case may happen that where the yielding takes place first. So you have to be a bit careful about how the load line is oriented. If it oriented like this, then fatigue failure is going to happen first. If the load line is lying low and like this, then yielding will happen first before the fatigue fracture. So both of this you can basically You can find a factor of safety for both or the yielding and the fatigue. The same way that we have find for fatigue, you can find for yielding, which will be OC divided by OA. That will be factor of safety against yielding. Any questions, guys, so far? It is just a recap of what we have seen or what we have learned just a while ago. And this is just to find the reversible, equivalent reversible stress. And that's what you need to use in that formula to find the number of cycles to failure. Because sigma mean is not 0. So you have to find what is the equivalent reversible stress such that you can use that in that equation to find what is the number of cycles to failure for these components. And to summarize or to finish the wrap up our lecture today, as I was mentioning to you that there are many failure theories that exist for fatigue. One is called ASME elliptic line, Gerber line, yield, Soderberg's line, and so on and so forth. But most commonly and most commonly used and referenced fatigue failure is called as modified Goodman line. That is what we have learned focused on in this lecture. So there are other failure theories as well, but just this is for the sake of the completeness. I'm providing you those failure theories I'm showing you in this slide, but we are only focusing on or going to use modified Goodman line throughout this course in 471. And also when we are doing components, actual machine component design in 472, we will be using modified Goodman line for fatigue failure. So I believe this is the last slide. This covers the concept that we need to learn for fatigue. Let me know if you guys have any questions and concerns. By the way, is it making sense? I mean, is everything that we have discussed so far make sense to you?
Still making sense, yes.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Great. So that is important that you actually get the gist of what we are trying to cover, and rest of the things will come from practice when you actually do the homework problem. So there is one more homework problem that is going to come in the beach board, and will be the last homework problem for this course. But the homework problem will give you the practice of applying or learning these concepts and applying those concepts in design case scenarios. So that will be useful for you to learn. So other than that, any other questions and concerns before we stop for today's lecture?